Look at this, it's perfect!
Okay, so when it comes to Supermassive's horror games, I feel like most people have a favourite. With that game, of course, being Until Dawn. And well, today guys, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I think that The Quarry is actually a better game than Until Dawn.
What?
Yes, I know it's hard to believe. Yes, I know there are some people out there asking me the question of how dare I, considering that The Quarry isn't even a sequel to Until Dawn. Well, prepare yourselves because I have a little bit of a surprise for you. The Quarry was initially a sequel to Until Dawn. Yes, initially Supermassive and Sony did work together to create the initial Until Dawn. However, their working relationship during the development of The Quarry fell apart. And to make a long story short, Sony refused to give Supermassive the rights to Until Dawn, and so Supermassive took their working framework for what was going to be an Until Dawn sequel and turned that into what it eventually became with The Quarry. And I mean, really, if you look at the game yourself, you can see just how much this was initially going to be an Until Dawn sequel. The game basically plays the same way, and a lot of the monster designs look pretty similar to what we see in Until Dawn. So it wouldn't be too much to say that the werewolves in The Quarry were initially going to be Wendigos, and the characters in Until Dawn 2 would have been something similar to what we saw in Until Dawn before it became The Quarry. And of course, the game did become The Quarry, so the Wendigos were changed to werewolves, and the characters became something wholly unique. Now, am I bummed that we didn't get an Until Dawn sequel? Not really. I actually enjoy The Quarry. That, and it was also revealed earlier this year that we will eventually be receiving an Until Dawn 2. Supermassive came back to the Sony State of Play earlier this year and gave us the first trailer for that game. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good and I'm pretty excited for what we've seen. And now, it's time to get back to the point of this whole video. Because of course, I think that The Quarry is a better game than Until Dawn.
Okay, not sure about that, but yay!
Why? Well, I think there's 3 reasons for that specifically. And those 3 reasons are story, presentation, and character. And so, let's get right into it and start with the story. Okay, so this is kind of a hard one to judge because both The Quarry and Until Dawn are the sorts of pick-your-own-adventure style video games. The game is centered around just giving you a story and allowing you to choose how it plays out. And honestly, that's what always brings me back to these sorts of games. I just think they're great. However, whilst I will admit that they are great games, I won't admit that they're great stories. And honestly, I won't do that for either Until Dawn or The Quarry. Which, by the way, is fine with me. I'm not complaining at all. Because of course, I don't think that the main point of this game is to give you a well-crafted story. Instead, I think that the whole point of this game is to just give you a story you can experience for yourself and then shape as you'd like. And honestly, in terms of Until Dawn and The Quarry, I do think that both games do this really well. When The Quarry first released back in 2022, I did see that some fans were really kind of disappointed in the game, saying that the game didn't have as good of a story as Until Dawn. And yeah, honestly this kind of perplexed me because I didn't really think that the story in Until Dawn was all that great to begin with. Again, instead what I thought was great about the game was just the fact that it gave you a story you could shape and experience however you wished. So the fact that Supermassive continued this legacy with The Quarry is something that I thought was, just kind of fine. Honestly, the story for both of these games does perfectly what it needs to do. It keeps me entertained and perfectly invested in what's happening with the characters. Which, as far as video games go, I think is really all you need. Sure, you can tell a great story with a video game, but really I think that the whole point of a video game is to just give you the chance to experience something and really have fun with the game that you're playing. And yeah, I'm sure you could make an argument that when it comes to branching story games like these with Supermassive, you really should put more emphasis on the stories being told. But personally, I just don't agree with that because I believe that there is more content in this game to enjoy aside from just the story. And again, personally, I've played through the stories of both these games and I've left them both feeling pretty satisfied. Not because the individual stories are that particularly well written, but instead just because I enjoyed the experiences better.
Not bad, not bad.
But still, there is more to these games than just their stories. And so of course now we need to talk about their presentation. Oh boy, the presentation of these games. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Okay, so, The Quarry and Until Dawn. They are both very graphically intensive games. Both games aim to achieve a pretty similar style, with the style of the games looking pretty realistic and really quite detailed. However, with that being said, they are still pretty distinctive and unique. Until Dawn focuses more on a sort of modern day presentation of a horror film, whilst The Quarry focuses more on a pretty retro VHS creature feature style for its game. I mean, hell, The Quarry even got a DLC that allowed you to put all the characters in 80s styled outfits, which honestly I thought was pretty cute. Personally, I think that the presentation for both of these games is pretty great, but I do enjoy the presentation of one game better than I do the other. And really, I have to say that I enjoy the presentation of The Quarry more than I do Until Dawn. Why? Well, really it just has a lot to do with the setting. In Until Dawn, the setting is focused around a mountain cabin. There's a lot of snow everywhere and a lot of what you expect to find with a sort of mountain holiday cabin getaway. Which honestly, for a horror story, I don't think is all that interesting. Especially not a horror story that we play with as a game and are meant to experience for ourselves. Perhaps this setting could work in something like a TV series or a film, but really for a game, I don't think it's all that interesting. And now, in comparison to that, The Quarry has a more lively, vibrant summer camp setting. And honestly, I find this so much more interesting than what we got with Until Dawn. Largely because the whole place isn't covered in snow. And beyond that, there's just more to this setting, and it really feels like there's more to this setting. When you're out in the dark in Until Dawn, the snow and the cold really makes you feel like you have to rush through the setting to get into the nearest log cabin or shelter. In The Quarry, on the other hand, the whole setting feels warmer. You don't have that sense of rush to just jump from shelter to shelter anymore. Instead, you feel like you can slow down, take your time, and look around at the vastness of this lush green forest around you. It's something that really feels more visually interesting and lively, which naturally makes you feel more inclined to explore and have a good time. The setting of Until Dawn gives you this impression that you're watching a horror story where there's this select group of characters stuck in this very secluded place. Really, it gives me this claustrophobic impression of being trapped somewhere. It leaves me alert and always looking for a monster. However, in The Quarry, everything feels a little bit more expansive. These differing settings are more alluring. They bring you in and then catch you off guard with the horror. And so personally, I really do just enjoy the impression and the feeling given off by The Quarry setting more than that given off by what we have in Until Dawn. And now, finally, I think it's time for the final reason why I think that The Quarry is better than Until Dawn. And that reason is the characters. Honestly, the characters for both of these games are just kinda decent the majority of the time. The actors do a pretty great job with what they're given, and honestly, yeah, there's no way that they could save a lot of this motion capture, which is just pretty janky.
Very nice.
Both sets of main characters play pretty similar to one another for both games. As well as this, both sets of main characters have various different branching story options, which again I think is pretty great. However, my problem with these characters does eventually come in with how you look at them as characters within the story. And by that, I mean that the characters in the first game are all arseholes. Which isn't to say that there aren't any arsehole characters in The Quarry. And honestly, I will always be the first person to admit that in any discussion like this. Because of course, The Quarry certainly has its own fair share of arsehole characters. But still, I do think that Until Dawn has the worst share of unlikable arsehole characters. And if you think I'm calling them this just because of what they do within the game itself, yes, you would be right to some extent. But really, my problem with this game's characters starts well before the game even starts. Because of course, there's a whole backstory to this game and its characters that we don't actually see play out on screen. We get a few vague hints and a few small details here and there, but really the vast majority of this game's story is focused on events that take place after this backstory. And really, my whole problem with this and the game's backstory is just that the way the characters follow up on this backstory makes them seem as if they are all assholes. The characters aren't people who are genuinely interested in actually remaining friends with one another, and aren't even characters who even really care for one another anymore, or at least not to the same extent that they did previously. Sure, there's a few exceptions with a few characters, but really the vast majority of the characters in this game, they're all kind of assholes who don't really care about one another. Or at least that was the impression given to me when I was playing through the game. In contrast to this, however, the Quarry starts off with its characters all actually being friends and having worked in the same place for quite a long time. These characters know and understand one another and actually engage with one another on a level that you would think that they would, having been friends for so long. And honestly, this dynamic and this banter that we get between these characters is something that I enjoy a whole lot more than what we got with Until Dawn. Because honestly, once the horror story actually gets started and these characters start to see a bunch of monsters running around, they do actually care about one another and actually work together to some extent to actually survive the night. And yes, I know that some people are instantly going to try and poke holes in this argument by saying that these characters were actually exceptions to what I just said by saying that they did so and so. Which, you're right, some characters do some pretty horrible things in this game. But really, the majority of all these horrible things that actually get done to these characters by other characters in this game only occur once one of these characters has been bitten and turned into a werewolf, or is on the way to becoming a werewolf. And so their judgment is corrupted and they're not really the same character that they initially were. So yes, these characters, I think, are better than the characters that we got in Until Dawn. Which, by the way, isn't me saying that I don't have any favourite characters from Until Dawn or characters that I like from Until Dawn. I do have both of those sorts of characters, and I do really try to keep those characters alive when I'm playing Until Dawn. It's just that I don't try to fight to keep those characters alive as much as I fight to keep someone like Dylan alive. Maybe I just like this idiot because he's unintentionally funny. So yes, I've finally come clean and admitted it. I like The Quarry better than I like Until Dawn. But still, I do still like both games. I think they're both pretty interesting and fun games to play, and I'm looking forward to Until Dawn's sequel whenever it releases. And honestly, I hope that I'll be able to keep my favourite characters from that game in as much as one piece as possible. Thank you all for watching, everybody. Please, if you liked the video, don't forget to do all the usual YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe and comment, and don't forget to tell me just how wrong I am in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.